difficult. So sorry about that, but I'm glad that we got hooked up because I definitely wanted to talk to you too.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I thought that this would be a good week to do it right before the election here with so much stuff happening.
Totally. Great time to do it. Great time to do it.
So how you feeling? Do you think Trump's got it in the bag, or what are you thinking?
Oh, I feel great about it. I think Trump's got it in the bag big time. What about you?
I mean, I think that he certainly wins if everything's above board. But being in Pennsylvania, I'm kind of a little worried with the shenanigans we see going on with the court decisions and just stuff that I know occurs in Pennsylvania with our governor, Tom Wolf. But if we could avoid all of the corrupt shenanigans, I think that he has it locked up.
Hey, what's wrong? What mic are you using? I'm having a hard time hearing your I
Let me
don't know
check
if
for you real quick here.
it sounds like you've got a webcam mic or something. It's like you might want to switch to your other mic because people in chat are commenting on yours too.
All right,
But if you
how's
want to
that?
take a
Is
look
that
at your mic, I'll respond to what you just said because I've heard through like several different articles and stuff,
check?
Pennsylvania is supposed to be the state that is most likely to have shenanigans, most likely to result in litigation. Obviously, Pennsylvania is one of the only states that's going to be accepting ballots after the election's over.
Right. Yeah.
And so, oh, that sounds so much better.
Thanks.
Holy cow,
Yeah,
what'd you do?
it was on the wrong mic. Yeah, that's what the problem was. So
Yeah, that sounded so bad. This is
good.
way better.
Good.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like Pennsylvania's got one of the like loosey-goosey voting laws, and it's likely to. I mean, that's the most likely place where you're going to see shenanigans.
Yeah, and it's disturbing because I will have to say, I mean, I ran as a Republican for Congress in District 12 of Pennsylvania, and I'm involved in the local politics, the state level politics. And I have to say, it brings me no pride in saying this as a Republican. I feel that the Republicans in this state have been weak and let Governor Tom Wolf act as a tyrant. And it just seems that it goes from everything from the COVID response and his disastrous lockdowns and hypocrisy on that to just the situations we see happening with court appointees and things like that. So it causes me some worry. But the positive is, look, when it comes to election cheating, the truth is they have to keep it close in order for the cheating to work. I mean, if Trump wins by 5% or so, there would be no chance, I think, that there would be any shenanigans that would be able to flip that. So I'm trying to do my best to get people out there and make sure that we win by a wide enough margin that, any sort of fraud won't be able to tip the scales.
That's awesome to hear. Good for you, and thank goodness that America has people like you out there at doing that. What you just said made me think about, I've been saying, I guess for probably the last month or couple months, I've been saying that I think one of the biggest issues that's going to decide this election is lockdowns because Trump has staked out a political position of reopening the country. Trump has been consistently saying, reopen the country. And Democrats, whether they like it or not, are in the position of being in favor of lockdowns. And so to me, I'm almost happy to see that Pennsylvania has a Democrat governor who's doing these lockdowns because it's got to be so unpopular. It's got to be just a political suicide for the Democrats to be pushing these lockdowns. And so do you think that the Pennsylvania Democrat governor doing these hardcore lockdowns and then you've got Trump out there campaigning about reopening the country and stuff, do you think that's going to help Trump?
I definitely do. And I think that the group that actually affects the most are people that maybe wouldn't come to mind first off. So I live in rural Pennsylvania. The truth is, a lot of people that I live around have been apolitical their whole life. They would have been Republicans if they voted, but they just basically want the government to leave them alone, and they don't vote, and they just go to their 9-to-5 job, and no one's that wealthy, just making enough to get by. These lockdowns, though, have forced everyone to be political. And at first, I think some of the propaganda was working, where I saw friends and family that normally were apolitical start to blame Trump. Like he mishandled the virus, and that's the reason for the lockdowns. But the single biggest factor in changing that for them was Governor Wolf. Because not only did he embrace these terrible lockdown strategies, but he's another one of these Democratic governors that put COVID patients into nursing homes, which caused thousands of deaths there. And then he violated his own lockdown orders to march with Black Lives Matter. And the culmination of that He said that there are two Pennsylvanias. There's a Pennsylvania for white people and a Pennsylvania for black people. Well, how'd that look in Philadelphia last night? Again, another city burning because an executive leader, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, gives cover to these racist Marxists that want to engage in domestic terrorism. So I think people are fed up, and it'll show at the polls.
Totally. Yeah. The rioting in Philadelphia, that cannot be good for the Democrats.
No, and it's, again, Governor Wolf, and I do a radio show on Saturdays, and one of my co-hosts is a guy by the name of Todd Bartley, who's a journalist out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He gets to sit in on Governor Tom Wolf's COVID press conferences, and he called Wolf out directly and said, look, you've issued these orders saying that we can't gather in groups of more than 50, yet you just went out and marched with Black Lives Matter. Do you see that as a violation of your orders? And Governor Wolf said, yeah. Next question. That was his response. And the picture that came from that protest, which you could find online, is Governor Wolf standing next to a bunch of people, most of which aren't wearing masks, and a person holding a sign that says Blue Lives Murder. And I think that image single-handedly convinced so many people of the tyranny we see coming. And it's actually the Democrats that have mishandled this virus and are encouraging these lockdowns. So I think Wolf, he's trying to position himself for a position in a Joe Biden administration. And I think just like so many other things Joe Biden did, it was a huge mistake to allow someone like Tom Wolf to be a big voice out there, because I think he really harmed the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said earlier about people who are not super political, that's always been, I think, the thing that like political commentators and people on the left especially, they totally forget. They think that everybody's just like them. They think that everybody is super obsessed with SJW, social justice, politics, and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, most Americans are not that interested in politics. Most Americans are not spending their days day in and day out obsessing about politics and stuff. And so it's those people. I mean, especially when you've got, you get in a presidential election in America, you get 55% voter turnout max. So you only really have a little more than half of the voters even turning out. And then the ones of those 50 to 55% that actually turn out, only a portion of them are actually like hardcore interested in politics. And so I think the view that the mainstream media have and stuff is just so warped and just so disconnected from sort of average people.
Well, and I think the biggest example of that was for 3 years, they pushed this fake Russia collusion hoax, which was just designed to spy on Trump and to cover up their own crimes. That's what impeachment was. That's what the Russia collusion hoax was. It's trying to criminalize looking into the crimes of the Democrats. And when they pushed this over and over through everything, I mean, it wasn't just through the media. I mean, you could see Marvel Avengers stars doing ads about Trump can't be trusted. He's a spy of Putin and all of this stuff. Yet over and over, when they polled people, they were like, we're not interested in this story at all. Because the average person, I think, regardless if they lean right or left, most people just want to be left alone. They want to go to work. They want to, have freedom to do what they want to for entertainment, and they want to be left alone. And for the first time in my lifetime, I'm seeing those people waking up going, now I'm forced to be political. Because the things I did that were important to my life, going to visit my mom at a nursing home, going to my job, going to church, those things have all been taken away. And so now you're forced to act. Yeah.
And the left has politicized everything, like sports.
Yep.
I mean, people watch sports in the NFL and the NBA to literally get away from politics and like to get away from the real world. And like the left has politicized the office, the American office. American corporate culture has been totally politicized. Our sports have been totally politicized. Our entertainment, TV, Hollywood, all been just pushing hard left politics. I think that's a huge turnoff to most people.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that's an accident either. I think that what we see occurring is this sort of globalism that you see being pushed by the establishment left. They want to make everyone... My theory is this. They want to usher in basically the end of nation states and globalism. And to do that, they realize the biggest impediment is the middle class, particularly in the United States. And so the Faustian bargain they want you to make is this. Look, we'll take care of you. We'll give you socialism and communism. We'll give you food. We'll give you shelter. We'll take care of you. But you have to worship us. And part of that agenda isn't just attacking us economically, which we see through the lockdowns, but it's making sure that you could never escape it. There is no escape. There is no entertainment outlet you could go to escape their indoctrination. It's straight out of an Orwell novel where it's designed to be this dystopia that makes you where you have to agree with them because you can never escape. And this is where I think a lot of people get wrong. Look, don't get me wrong. When it comes to sports, I'm a huge sports fan. I am very upset with the endorsement of Black Lives Matter and the disrespect of our country. But I think even more than that, what turns most people off is exactly what you said. It's not that they're turned off by the political message of Kaepernick, though many people are. It's that they're just like, please shut up. I want to watch sports. Leave me alone.
Right.
And I think they're realizing that, look, the days of you being able to say, well, I'm going to sit this one out, I'm not political, those are ending because the Democrats have politicized everything.
For sure. So, I mean, every single logical conclusion, everything we're seeing around the country, various different data points, various different polls, and granted outlier polls, but all of these different things, so many different ideas and thoughts and stuff all lead to the idea that Trump is winning and winning big. But then the Democrats and the left will say, oh, but look, there's, look at all of these polls, all these different polls show Biden winning. And I'm just like, you're only looking at the polls. You're not looking at anything else going on in the country right now. You're not using common sense. You're not looking at any other data points. It's just the polls. It's going to be a Biden victory. I think it's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I think the polls are gaslighting people for their attempt to steal the election. So, for example, take Pennsylvania. Like, I think the Real Clear Politics average still has Biden up like 6-7 points in Pennsylvania, which I just can't believe. But the reason they do that is, then if they are able to magically 3 days after election, enough ballots come in that are all for Joe Biden to swing the state his way, they'll say, well, hey, it matched up with the polls. That proves that there wasn't any shenanigans. And this is obviously ridiculous. Anyone who has a memory more than a year long remembers this is analogous to exactly what was going on in 2016. And they cite these polls, which, I believe are almost completely worthless. And, they take confidence in that. And in many ways, it ends up backfiring on them because in 2016, they had such hubris. They were so certain that Hillary was going to win that it became devastating for them. And as long as they keep believing their own bubble, as long as Democrats keep looking at Twitter and Twitch and saying, oh, yeah, look at how radical everyone is. Yep, we're going to keep pushing these radical policies, pack the court, all of this stuff. They're going to continue to lose because the average American can't stand those things.
Right. Well, so what I guess sort of two questions. One is, what do you think about the theory that they're using these polls to basically try to delegitimize Trump's victory? So if Trump wins, then they're going to say, hey, look at the polls. Trump should not have won. The only way Trump could have won is with, thank you so much, Mr. Sinister, for 5 gifted tier 1 subs. Sorry, Rob, I had to say that. Thank you, Mr. Sinister. 5 gifted subs. Awesome. But no, I was going to say, like, they want the polls to show Trump winning, or Biden winning. So then when Trump wins, they can say that was an illegitimate victory. Look at the polls. If this was a fair election, Trump would have lost. Therefore, we're gonna challenge the legitimacy of Trump's victory. We're gonna say that Russia hacked the election. That's the only way Trump could have won, is Russia hacked the election, because look, the polls had Biden winning. I guess that's my first question. And then second question, with your theory about the polls, how do you respond to people who say, oh, that's all completely conspiratorial to suggest that there's like this, purposeful gaslighting going on behind the polls?
So to the first question, I think you're absolutely right. That's the other side of the coin, the same coin that I was talking about. I think that that's clearly part of their agenda. And keep in mind, anything could happen. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there could be a bombshell story that drops, 12 hours before the election. So I'm not the type of person that's going to make any certainty or say this is definitively going to happen. I leave room for any outcome. So I think that these people that are corrupt in the establishment in the Democratic Party feel the same way. For example, in 2016, the spying on Trump was to find dirt that they could use during the election, but it was also to make sure that Trump was stymied after the election. In the same way, I think these polls are doing those two things. It's delegitimizing Trump if he wins, And this is what you see not just with the polls, but every time Trump talks of the corruption of the left, they say, oh, it's Russia disinformation. It's all gaslighting people to believe, oh, Trump's a Nazi. Who could possibly like him? If he's getting votes, it either has to be from racist or it's because of disinformation that's out there. And that's clearly not true. All you have to do is go to any Trump rally and you can see there are plenty of great people. The vast majority of Trump supporters are honest, hardworking people that are very tolerant of other people, and they're not these, people buying into Russian disinformation or people that are racist, like you said. Now, the second,
hold on, let me just quick respond before you go to that's a bigger problem, sort of writ large across the whole political spectrum, about how the left and the Democrats, they have this super warped version of what a conservative is or what a Republican is. It's like, it's not just limited to Trump supporters. It's like they have a completely false perception and false view of what a conservative is and what a Republican is. And they assume the worst and do personal attacks and assign bad motives. And it's like, no, conservatives are people that we want the best. We want to help the poor. We have policies that are designed to help everybody the most, and all these positive things. But I think it's a problem across the entire sort of political area with Democrats having this sort of super warped version of what any Republican or conservatives, not just Trump supporters.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's this guy's actually a left winger. His name's Jonathan Haidt. And he started a thing called Heterodox Academy. And what he's done has been blowing the whistle on academia and how radically left it's becoming. And again, this is a Hillary voter. He's not a Trump supporter, but he is someone that, even though he's on the left, he realizes the danger of academia just becoming extremely extremist left. He did these polls, or he did these studies over and over again. And what he does is he gets a large group of students, like 500 students, and he'll say, identify yourself as a Republican, a Democrat, or a third party or independent. And then he gets everyone's identification. Then he hands them this survey. And the survey asks these hypothetical life questions. So it'll say something like this. You're walking down the street and you see a homeless man. What do you do? And then there's like 10 options. Like, you give the homeless man food, you take him home with you and give him a place to stay at your place, etc. So everyone fills out this survey. But this is the part that's interesting that he does in the study. He then gives the survey back to them and says, now, I want you to fill this out as if you're the opposite political party. So if you're a Republican, fill it out as if you think Democrats would. And if you're a Democrat, fill it out as if you think Republicans would. And what he finds every single time is that overwhelmingly, Republicans are able to empathize with Democrats, and they're basically pretty correct in how Democrats will respond. But the Democrats almost every single time paint the Republicans to be monsters. So they'll answer like, kick the homeless man in the stomach. And that's what they truly believe Republicans are. They think Republicans are evil. And so it once more goes to justify the old saying, Republicans think Democrats are wrong. Democrats think Republicans are evil. And that's exactly what you see occurring with all of this gaslighting. And I think the polls are a part of that.
Okay, totally. All right. So what do you say to the people that would say, oh, what are you talking about, man? That's a conspiracy. They can't possibly be all, working together with the pollsters and the media and the Democrats to do something like that.
So all you have to do is look at this Hunter Biden story to see that that's an absurd take. We have, in black and white, emails, we have witness testimony, several witness testimony, pictures, emails, videos that show this corruption between Biden and his son Hunter and places like the CCP and the Ukraine, corrupt companies in the Ukraine, and the media is refusing to cover it. Now, if that doesn't show, so tech companies are censoring people wanting to talk about it. If this doesn't show holistically how they're all involved in this, that they're all part of the establishment and they're part of this unelected bureaucracy that really tries to control this country, I don't know what else does. And I've been saying this for a long time, whether it comes to voter fraud or it comes to manipulating polls and things like that. We are talking about a Democratic Party in conjunction with the media apparatus and FBI and Silicon Valley that have done the following things in just the past couple months. They've covered up this Biden corruption story. They've covered up the widespread riots we see occurring on the left. And then when they were forced to acknowledge, they pretended that they weren't covering up for them and somehow tried to blame the right wing for it. They've actually covered up the fact or directly endorsed infecting elderly people in nursing homes with COVID. And for those of you who don't know, this might be the most blatant example of the evilness that I've seen. I'm not talking about your average Democrat neighbor. I'm not saying they're involved in this. But when you see Democratic governors that intentionally put COVID patients into nursing homes and then went, oh, look how many people died. That means we have to lock you down more. Oh, by the way, it's Donald Trump's fault. Do you really think that people that are willing to sentence people to death in nursing homes, that are willing to endorse riots in this country, that are willing to withhold stimulus money from people suffering from the lockdown, do you think they're against lying on some polls? You think they're against voter fraud? Not a chance.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is that, like, it's not like a real conspiracy that's going on, but rather it's just all of these leftists are so just intolerant, and they all, demand fealty, and they demand everybody agrees with each other, and they demand that you be a leftist for you to do business deals with them. And it's like, it's not a conspiracy. It's just a natural result of sort of leftists, getting into positions of power and operating the way leftists do. It's just a natural result of all of these Democrats in these positions of power. It's not really like a conspiracy. It's worked out this way because this is how Democrats operate.
Well, and I'm glad you said that. That's absolutely true. And it's one of the reasons that I really like your channel, who's basically the canary in the coal mine for conservatives on Twitch. Because the reason that this stuff happens is because the right lost the culture war. Right? We lost academia 30 years ago. We left it become this extremist left-wing thing. We lost Hollywood and the entertainment industry. We lost, the music industry. Everything that we look at as an entertainment. We lost the media. We lost Silicon Valley. And so what happens is when you see what's going on in all of these areas, just take academia, for example, and they're pushing critical race theory into every subject, which is the idea that, you're judged based on your race. It's like the 1619 Project. The United States is this evil place. If you're a white person, you're an evil person. They separate you in identity politics. And it's all based in these postmodernist theories. Once you start to believe that, you don't need someone to tell you to be involved in a conspiracy. So, for example, go back to Lois Lerner and the IRS scandal. I don't believe that Barack Obama sat down and was like, hey, Lois, I want you to go after the Tea Party. I don't think that's what happened. I think that there was an understanding from everyone in the Obama administration. We are smarter and more moral than every other American. Everyone who voted against us is dumb or immoral, and therefore we know what's right, and we're going to change this country by any means necessary because we're right. And that mentality is what allows for, it looks like these huge conspiracies where people are sitting around in smoky rooms with cigars and monocles. But it's not that. It's just a bunch of people that have been raised to believe we know better than everyone else, we're the best, and we don't think it's immoral for us to engage in hypocrisy or in fraud or in illegal activities. I mean, the same's true of the FBI.
Right, because they justify that because of their twisted view of what Republicans are. And they think everybody that disagrees with them is a Nazi. And so they say, well, since we're dealing with Nazis, it's actually okay to lie and cheat and steal and commit fraud and maybe even violence and all these other things because, hey, it's a Nazi on the other side.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so, you see it in the FBI, for example, when in their coup attempt against Trump. Yes, there were people at the top, like your Brennans, your Comeys, your Clappers, that were dealing with people like Joe Biden, Susan Rice, others in the Obama administration, including Obama himself. But I think the average FBI agent, ask yourself, you see all of the texts that came out where FBI agents were like, whoa, this looks shady. For example, we know that FBI agents went to Comey and were like, in September and said, we have evidence that Hillary Clinton manufactured this entire Russia collusion hoax to distract us from investigating her server. But why were there no whistleblowers? And I think it has to do with that because we just have this cultural, everyone that seems to control the narrative has this narrative that Trump and his supporters are Nazis. Or if you're in the State Department, that Trump's, ruining years of foreign policy decisions that were created at the State Department. And so they're able to then justify either silence and allowing the corruption to occur or acting in a corrupt way because they feel, well, we're doing this to stop this great orange menace. And that's a good thing. And history will look back on us in a good way. In reality, they're not. They're just acting corrupt, and they're acting with arrogance that they have no reason having this arrogance because it turns out these people are some of the least impressive people in the country.
Totally, totally. Yep.
So yeah, I saw you were covering the Biden story a little. What do you think of that whole can of wax?
Oh, I mean, I've been convinced for a long time that Joe Biden is corrupt. I mean, he's everything that people hate about career politicians. He's been in Washington D.C. for almost 50 years. He's the most insider establishment swamp monster that exists. I mean, there's nobody that's more of a career politician and more of a Washington D.C. insider than Joe Biden. And look, there's corruption, on both sides of the aisle, especially people that have been in D.C. for that long. But Joe Biden, I mean, of course, Joe Biden's corrupt. That's how it works. And Peter Schweitzer has written books about how it works with the. I haven't read them, but I want to. But I've heard a lot about them. About how they, how these career politicians are able to use family members to enrich themselves and stuff. And so there's not a doubt in my mind that Joe Biden is a corrupt politician.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
and all this stuff just confirms it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I thought this whole Trump tax story was funny. I mean, to me, the idea was what they were trying to do was go along with Hillary Clinton's plan to smear Trump as a Russian asset. They wanted his taxes because they thought that it would be a smoking gun. Well, if Trump did business in Russia, that proves that he's a Russian plant. Why would that be of anyone's concern? What's the news story here? International businessman does business internationally. Of course, the man's a billionaire. I expect he has businesses all around the globe. What interests me more, and is what you're getting to there, is I'm less interested in how people made their fortunes before they got in office. I'm more interested in how they made their fortunes once they were in office. And when you see career politicians like Biden and Pelosi that are getting paid $100,000 a year salaries, but they're worth dozens of millions of dollars, you have to wonder, where did that money come from? And, with Biden, like what you're talking about, Peter Schweizer's book, look, like here's an example of how this occurred. We have in Burisma, which is a gas company in the Ukraine that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of. This company was called corrupt, not by me, not by you. It was called corrupt by the Obama administration. They're the people that said, look, the guy running this, Zlochevsky's corrupt. And the way this works is, it wasn't just Hunter Biden. You also had John Kerry's family involved. Allegedly, Mitt Romney's family's involved. So you're right, it goes across the aisle. And what they do is they give U.S. tax dollars to a foreign country like Ukraine, who then gives that money to an energy company. That energy company then hires the family of the very same politicians that voted to send the money over there. They then pay that family huge sums of money, who then take that money back to those corrupt politicians in the United States. And this occurs, I mean, if you think it's bad in Ukraine, China, it's even worse. So no doubt there was corruption there. And, to me, I have to admit, I'm frustrated by Republicans that during the impeachment that they weren't more aggressive in pointing out the corruption, because all the impeachment of Trump was trying to criminalize Trump investigating the Obama administration's corruption. I mean, I think that, to me, I don't understand. Like, let me just give you and your audience a hypothetical here, like in a nonpartisan position. I think that we need to be able to agree on certain truths in this country to have a cohesive country. One of the truths would go something like this. If there's a high-ranking executive official who uses huge sums of U.S. tax dollars to force the firing of a foreign prosecutor that's looking into their family's business, there needs to be an FBI investigation. Period.
I totally agree. Totally, yeah.
And it blew my mind, because it's like, if that was Don Jr., if Don Jr. was working for a Ukrainian gas company and Donald Trump came out and said, yeah, I'm not going to give this $1 billion that was voted by Congress to you unless you fire the prosecutor looking into my son's company, he would have been impeached the next day. Yet somehow I had to listen to all of these people say, well, it was okay for Joe Biden to do that. It was okay. So for me, I was a little disappointed that, Trump's doing a good job. There are people, Peter Schweizer, John Solomon, Tucker's been good. And there's other people that have been doing good. But where were all those Republicans in the impeachment hearing bringing this out? The Senate did better than the House, I felt. But yeah, I mean, Biden is as corrupt as they come. And it's almost a bigger story than Biden's corruption is the media wholesale proving that they're just propagandists and refusing to cover that corruption.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think the Republicans tried to do that during the impeachment, but it's just, it's so hard when there still are so many Americans that believe the media, and the media is just straight up putting out fake news and propaganda.
Yeah, and that's why, I guess this is a question I'll ask you. Why are you willing to do the debates with some of the left wing people you do? I get asked that question a lot, so I'd be interested to hear your answer.
Well, I originally did it for exposure on Twitch and
Okay.
to practice debating my ideas and, to become well. But I've had more of a change of heart on it over the last couple of months, where I don't think it's really worth it anymore to do it, because a lot of these Twitch leftists are just so toxic and so hateful and so negative that I don't actually think it's good for my soul and my mental well-being to even surround myself with people that are that negative and toxic, and to interact with people like that. And so I don't really think I'm going to be doing much of it anymore. But originally it was just like, hey, it's a way to get known on Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot that has a lot to do with why I did it as well. I just recently started Twitch, maybe 5 months ago, but I've had a YouTube channel for like 3 years. But one of the things that I do it for is because I'm trying to show that audience that we're not going to give up on anything. I'm not going to give up on the platform of Twitch, even though the politics on it's 90%, left wing, much of that being extreme left wing. And even if, I do a debate like with Destiny and he has 5,000 fans watching that are all like, oh, this is just some fat racist conservative. I don't care, because there might be 5 of his people that are watching that were like, wow, that guy kept his head the whole time. He was polite. He didn't respond with vitriolic attacks, and he had the facts on his side. And I think that, how this relates to what the Republicans did in the impeachment, I think that they need to get better and being willing to understand they are on the right side of the issues, and they need to be confident and go on the offense and not be afraid to say, well, I need to keep, you could do so in a polite way. You don't have to be Donald Trump, but they need to be more aggressive. And I would have liked to have seen them make the case more against Joe Biden there. But yeah, when it comes to these debates on Twitch, I totally get you. I mean, it is unbelievable. It's like pulling teeth. They won't admit anything. You can't have a fair discussion with them. For example,
no, it's a joke.
I'm debating. I don't know if you know Pisco. He does a lot of Twitch streams.
Yeah,
he's actually been decent to me. I don't have anything negative to say about him as a person, but I'm debating him this Friday at 6 on the Ukraine and China and Biden scandal. I did a Russia collusion debate with him a couple weeks ago. And he'll ask me a question. He'll be like, well, do you think that, if Donald Trump admitted that he fired James Comey because he wanted to bury the Russia investigation, would that have been a big deal? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But that's not what happened. But sure, it would have been a big deal. And then I'll ask him a question like, do you think that before the FBI uses information from a spy to spy in a political campaign that they should verify it? He can't just say, yeah. He has to do a 9-minute soliloquy. And so I'm just sitting there scratching my head like, dude, how can we have a debate if you can't admit the most fundamental truths? You could say, sure, they should verify it, but here's what I think. But they won't say that. And then meanwhile, he had a partner whose name I don't remember. And all this guy did the entire time was drop the F-bomb and make jokes at me. And I'm like, what is my incentive to be here? Like, if you want to have a fair discussion, I'm willing to do it. But I'm not here just to, have some guy insult me the whole time and act like he's, having sick burns on me or something. It's just nonsense.
No, I agree. It's totally not worth it in that way. I totally agree with that. It's just like, why would you even dignify them with your presence? It's like, these people are going to be that rude and disrespectful and unprofessional. It's just like, why?
Yeah, I mean, and it gets tough. So I'm like you. I've been far more selective. Plus, I hate the 8-person panels because it's almost impossible to actually draw out a good point because there's 8 people there. But I've been more selective in the debates. But it's sad because that's my background. I did debate in college and then was a debate coach. And so I like the idea of debate, but it's so hard to find someone in good faith that disagrees with you to debate. All they want to do is the first time I did one of those 8-person debates, it took literally 3 minutes for them to call me a racist. They said I was dog whistling to racism. And the conversation had nothing to do with race. It had to do with capitalism. And I'm just like, we're the people that are called divisive all the time, and we're willing to have these conversations. It's ironic that they themselves are like, yeah, we're about diversity, but only if you agree with us. It's just ridiculous.
Right. No, it is. It's totally ridiculous. And, it's tough because you don't want to just say, I'm not going to talk to anybody anymore on the left that disagrees with me. You don't want to do that. But it is very difficult to find somebody who's worth your time to even debate.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how long you wanted to go. I'm good until 9 if you want, which would be, I guess, 7 on your end, but,
yeah, we can keep talking. I'm like having dropped frames here. It's really annoying me. I want to try restarting my router and my modem. So
okay, no problem.
See if that fixes it. But, I don't know. We can keep going for a little bit and then call it good.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. So yeah, when it comes to kind of this corruption issue with the media, I think that's quickly becoming a bigger story than the Joe Biden corruption. And I mean, it's something that I'm sure you've said this for years as well, but it's something that conservatives have been saying for years about the corruption, how we no longer have a free press. They're just kind of a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. And if nothing else, Trump has shown that in spades. I mean, of all the good things Trump's done, this is amongst the top. Finally outing these people in the FBI and in the media for just the partisan hacks that they are.
Oh, for sure. Oh, I agree. I mean, I think that's why you see trust in the media is at an all-time low.
Right. And I hope...
Which is not a good place to be. I mean, it's not good when we're this divided and people just reject out of hand stuff that the mainstream media says, and then and then the Democrats don't believe anything that any conservative media says. So it's a horrible spot to be in terms of our country.
Oh, and I say this all the time. Have you ever watched like one of those what do they call it, like the White House press correspondents dinner where they celebrate themselves and they give themselves awards?
Yeah.
The irony is, if you listen to one of those speeches, it's actually true what they're saying. So they'll say all of these high-minded philosophical comments like, oh, the fourth estate, the press, we speak truth to power, and it's so important to have a free press, to have a democracy, because we're the last bastion of hope between, corruption when it occurs in government and informing the people. And all of that's true. It's just sad that we don't have that. I mean,
right.
They understand the importance of a free press, yet they're either corrupt or they have this cognitive dissonance where they think, oh, and that means we have to help Joe Biden win. Well, that's not the free press. And it becomes...
No, yeah, it's horrible.
And it's... Their bias is so obvious. Like, even Twitter... They can't even after the fact, they can't come up with reasons to justify their decisions to censor certain stories, which always happen to be those that are critical of the Democrats. So now the new take is, well, if we can't verify stories, then we're skeptical to run with them on our platform. This is the same platform that made untold amount of advertising dollars by repeating every smear they could against Brett Kavanaugh, by repeating every smear they could about Trump being a Russia colluder. And all of these were lies that were never verified. But now they want
like
you to believe...
actual fake, actual disinformation.
Right. Yeah, it's just... And by the way, like something, again, I think Republicans need to do better. Ask your... If you're listening out there, ask your Democrat friends. Be polite, but ask them this. What did Bob Mueller say were the instances of Russian interference into our election? And he basically said 2 things. He said... a bunch of Russians on Pokemon Go and Facebook putting memes. Now, the truth is that was $50,000 worth of memes in an election that was $500 billion was spent. And most of those weren't seen till after the election. But okay, fair enough. That's one. And then the second was supposedly hacking the DNC, which I still haven't seen proof of. But the biggest example of Russian interference by far is the FBI in 2009 knew that the primary subsource of Christopher Steele's claims was a Russian spy. And he sent disinformation that was so effective that Rasmussen polled that over 50% of Democrats still believe the Steele dossier is true. It was so effective that the FBI used it to spy on Donald Trump's campaign. And yet every media outlet reported on that. Like it was, absolute fact, like it was totally verified. They spread Russian disinformation, the most effective Russian disinformation. They're still spreading it. And yet they have the nerve to tell you, well, if you point out that these obvious, emails of Hunter Biden are real and authentic and show possible corruption with Biden, they're like, well, that's Russian disinformation. And, it infuriates me. One of the things I try to do is tell the people, my friends on the left, like, listen, if you think they're only going to do that to Donald Trump, you're mistaken. For example, look at Jill Stein. I'm no Jill Stein fan, but guess what? They smeared her as a Russian asset. Look at Tulsi Gabbard. They smeared her as a pro-Assad, pro-Russian asset. So this is the playbook. They're going to use it against Democrats as well. It's more than just...
They'll use it against anybody. That's one of the biggest misconception out there amongst some Republicans too, is that, hey, if we just get a moderate Republican who's not super conservative, the Democrats will like him. It's like, look what they did to Mitt Romney. Look what they did to John McCain. Yep. They'll destroy anybody.
Yeah, and you even see this, with the censorship efforts. There are left-wing people that are censored. It's those that aren't towing the left-wing establishment line. So, for example, if you're a left-wing person and you're furious because you're like, well, I'm some socialist progressive and, Joe Biden doesn't represent those ideals, allegedly. The truth is Joe Biden's just an empty suit. But whatever, maybe you're on the left and you're like, yeah, I have questions about this corruption of Joe Biden. They'll censor you as well. And so I'm trying, right. I feel this is an issue that we can, there's so much division in the country. And of course, I think it comes from both sides, but I blame the establishment and the left far more for it. But, I'm biased. I'm a Republican. But one of the things we could come together on is just focusing on things that both sides should be legitimately upset about, such as the FBI engaging in a coup against Trump, or the media no longer being the media and just being propagandists. That's stuff that we could both come together. Or how about this? How about peace in the Middle East? Like, I don't care if you like Trump or not. Even if your take is, look, I think Hillary could have had more peace in the Middle East than Trump. I think that's ridiculous. But can't you at least give credit where credit's due? Hey, these deals are great. Like, that's awesome that this is happening. It's so sad to me that we can't come together on that stuff at least.
Oh, I agree. It's horrible. It's terrible. Hey, well, this Trump rally is supposed to start at 6:30. I was going to watch that, and then I need to restart my modem and router. I'm dropping frames like crazy. It's driving me insane. So,
well, no problem. Let me just say, if I could give a shout out to everyone listening on your channel. I'm just on Twitch. I'm Normal America with Rob Noor. I'm also the same on YouTube, and you can find me on DLive at Normal America. But it's been a blast talking to you, and I think we should do it more often. I have a great time talking.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, I'm totally down. Let's do it again.
All right, man. Hey, take it easy.
Cool. Talk to you later.
Yep, we'll see you. Hey, is my audience still here? Hello, hello, hello. Let me get off Discord here for a second. I'll talk to y'all for a couple minutes. So yeah, that was my friend LCTRfan. I did one of those 8-panel debates with him, and I thought that he was an interesting guy. And I will say this about LCTRfan. He's got it's not a huge channel, but he has a Twitch channel, which it's in the link to the description, and you should check out. But he is someone that went to Twitch, and I think that's important because as conservatives, we shouldn't give up on platforms. And I can say this about Twitch, despite people warning me how censorious Twitch was, they've yet to censor any of my videos or anything like that. So it's predominantly a video game streaming platform, but the left has gotten involved in politics in there in a big way. And so on Twitch, the left political streamers are doing far, far better than the very few right political Twitch streamers that there are. So LCTRfan, like I said, was sort of a canary in a coal mine, and I am trying to be there. That's why I do these debates and stuff, to show that I'm not afraid of left-wing Twitch and the streamers we see there. Hey, what's up, Panzerly? I saw you on LCTRfan's I saw you on his chat there. So yeah, thanks so much for joining. Considering liking and subscribing if you're a fan of this. But yeah, LCTRfan then did one of the debates. That's where I met him. Like he said, those debates are almost worthless. But kudos to him for actually getting on a platform like that. And look, here's the thing. I say this all the time. It's not just important to reach out to different platforms. It's important to reach out to different groups, even those that you're maybe not comfortable reaching out to, such as you're talking to a bunch of communists. As long as it's a good faith conversation, I'll talk to anyone. One of the things I've said as someone who's in the Republican Party is that we need to start reaching out. The Republican Party is now the big tent party. We are the party of Martin Luther King's ideal. And I understand there might be certain things you didn't like about King, but the idea that he represented of we judge you by the content of your character and not the color of your skin, that is the Republican Party. Except it's more than that. It's not just the color of your skin. It's also your gender, your sexual preference, all of these other things. We don't care about that. We care about who you are as a person, or at least that's what we should care about as Republicans. It's the Democrats and the establishment that want to break us into these groups based on skin color, gender, and all of these other characteristics. We need to say, and I think that one of the ways we reach out to different people, for example, this is my plan for reaching out to inner city communities. We don't have to change our message. You don't have to change what you believe in. Never do that. You are who you are. Stand up for what you believe in. But as a party, we could show how the message and the things we believe in, and not just a party, because trust me, those that watch me often understand, I criticize the Republicans heavily often. So it's more than just a party. It's an ideal. It's like the idea of being conservative. The way we reach out is we don't change our beliefs. We just show how those beliefs are good for everyone. And so one of the things I recommend is when we reach out to like inner city and we reach out to like the black community, that we're honest with them. And we say, look, we will treat you as an individual. We don't think you're monolithic. We don't look at you and say, oh, you're a black person, so you must think X. That's not what we're about. We have ideas. We think that the ideas of fiscal conservatism, we think things like school choice would massively increase the education on the inner city black communities, which would, in a generation or two, would lead to far greater economic opportunities, which would be amazing, which would then lead to more two-parent households. We think that ending the disastrous war on poverty decisions that incentivize single-parent households would be an incredible benefit to the black community. But fair enough, we understand there could be argument on policies. But what our fundamental promise to you is this: we will treat you as an individual. That's it. We're not going to treat you like you're just some cog in a machine. Oh, you're black, so here's your black community leader. Oh, you're Hispanic, so you must think this way. We don't do that. And I think that that is a position that we could start to see. I'm not saying all of a sudden, oh, if we go into Philadelphia with that message, we'll get 70% black turnout for Republican. I'm not saying that at all. But it beats not going into those communities and talking to them. And sadly, that's what happens much of the time. You should be out talking to people even that disagree with you, if you're a politician, right? And another example of that is with young people. Young people historically aren't very conservative. We could reach out to young people. Here's my message to young people. You ready? Do I look like someone who's miserable? Do I look like someone who doesn't like having fun? Believe it or not, I very much like having fun. I'm very much a happy person. Here's what we could offer you.
Chat, you are not going to believe this.
We think that we don't judge you based on one mistake that maybe you made in the past. We're not going to go through your Twitter for the past 14 years to see if you said something in high school that we now deem offensive and try to cancel you for that. We think that it's okay to joke around. We think that it's okay to have fun. We're people that aren't screaming at the sky every day because we're upset that we lost an election. That's the other side.
Dropping frames.
The Democrats are the party, and that ideology of the progressive left is the party and the ideology that will parse through your life with a fine-tooth comb to try to find one offensive thing you said to cancel you if you don't agree with them on everything. We're the party of fun. Every young person out there has done something stupid. I did it. All
any
of
big
you
corporations. This is
How would you like that if
So
that was held over
annoying,
your head the
man.
rest of your life?
So
Because that's the
annoying.
future of the Democratic Party.
My internet sucks, dude.
Oh, the lag's terrible? Is anyone else experiencing lag?
in its entirety, start to finish. There's
Oh,
no
I'm
spin,
sorry.
no narrative. Please support us.
Let me fix
There are
that
one
for
of
you.
three ways you can do it. You can go to our super.
There, that should be good. Sorry about that. Poor lecture fan. I had his channel going. Sorry about that. Yeah. That should have fixed the audio issue. Sorry about that. But anyways, the reason I bring that up is because I think what lecture fan's doing and what I'm trying to do is you don't give up on people because they generally don't agree with you. And I mean that in the group sense. And you don't give up on a platform because Now, if they're censoring you or something like that, that's one thing. But I'll keep posting on Twitch, and I get more grief from Twitch than any other platform. Like I said, I had people make a website accusing me of heinous things on Twitch. I have, when I'll like debate someone on Twitch and they just cuss me out the whole time, then all of a sudden I'll get like 13, 14 of that person's followers that'll then follow me on Twitter and just say heinous stuff to me the whole time there. I don't care. Whatever. So, I mean, yeah, let's see if I could, I'll see if I can find that website actually. For you. I want to look at it before I show it to you to make sure that there's no nudity or anything on it, but you'll see what I mean. It's not good. Oh, well, they took it down. Here's the URL. In fact, I'll show you just so I'm not accused of lying. Let's see if I can bring this up. You see? Rob Noor at pedoclown.com, something. That was on my Whispers of Twitch. That person, Max, which normally I wouldn't show someone's name like that. But yeah, that was someone who watched me debate someone on Dylan Burns TV Twitch channel and decided to make a website. Now the website is down, so they must not have paid for it. But yeah, it was basically just pictures of people in clown makeup and saying stuff about how I'm a pedophile. That's what left-wing Twitch is about. I've had people I switched jobs, but I had people contact my place of work because they found that I had a LinkedIn account and they found out where I worked, and they contacted my work and said I was a racist Nazi and things like that. So yeah, this stuff happens. And I'm not using a pseudonym. This is who I am, Rob Noor. I live in Clarion County. I ran for Congress. My information's easily available online, so that's what you deal with. I don't care if people insult me and make jokes at me. That's one thing, but trying to get me fired seems to be a bit more. And you always worry about your family. I have a wife, I have a baby coming in January, so that stuff sucks. But yeah, I think I'm effective, and I think that what I show, and you'll see it again this Friday at 6 p.m. On Dylan Burns' channel. I'll be debating on the Bidens and the corruption with Ukraine and China. And I guarantee everyone that's watching on the left-wing channels will be saying, he's a Nazi, he's a racist, oh, look at him, he's fat, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. But I like to think, and I've had a couple people when I debate people like that reach out to me and say, look, I'm on the left, but I think you purported yourself very well, and you're one of the most effective conservatives I've seen. I didn't just go on there yelling and screaming and name-calling. And so that's what I try to do. But the 8-person panels are a bit much for me anymore. It just, yeah, I heard what they did to Tucker's house. Yeah, and let me say, Chris, I like Dylan. I do. I think his politics are terrible, but I like him as a person. But yeah, he can't control the nuts that come on his channel. I wouldn't want, if I had one person on here, if I bring a guest on and one person's in my chat and they're harassing my guest, I don't want my guests to blame me for that, So, I give Dylan that same courtesy. But yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, you can see it. Just go back. All the debates are on YouTube that I do on these channels. Go back and look at them. I mean, constantly. You'll see people yelling and screaming at me, cursing me out, interrupting me, and then claiming that they have some sort of moral high ground. I mean, it's constantly the case. And sometimes I, flip my lid a little, like when I debated the Antifa debate I did, where I would sit there and leave the other person talk for 9 minutes, and then I would try to say something. They go, wait a minute. As soon as I tried to talk, I used to go on person Prime K's channel, and I used to do big panels with him, and I had to get off that because, unlike Dylan, I thought that he was a biased moderator. Oh, yeah, I debated Antifa, but I debated You know, I said Antifa was a terrorist organization. My opponent did not feel so we had a debate on that. And look, I'm not perfect at the debates or anything like that. And what LCTRfan was saying was true. The reason that these debates are difficult, it's easy to, if you're not, and I said the same of Trump-Biden debates and things like that. The reason that, perhaps so, FTW. It's hard when you're involved in these debates to say everything that you're thinking of. If it's a fair-minded debate and it's in good faith, it's easier. But oftentimes what you'll see is there's either bad faith going on, or there's constant interruptions, or there's name-calling, or, you know, I can handle all that stuff better than, let me give you an example of one of the first debates I did online, and that's with a Twitch streamer named Destiny. And so I went to Destiny's channel, and let me just say, for those of you that know Destiny, he's a bigger streamer. He was nothing but polite to me behind the scenes at all. I have nothing bad to say about him as a person. If you're saying, oh, I've seen some of Destiny's stuff, he said X, Y, Z, he was a gentleman to me. Just saying. And that's the God's honest truth. Totally disagreed with his take in our discussion, but I thought he was a gentleman to me behind the scenes. So for what it's worth. The debate was over the Ukraine impeachment. And my take from the get-go, as you heard me saying to LCTRfan there, was, look, if there was a reason to investigate Joe Biden and Ukrainian interference into our election, then there's no case for impeachment. Because the case for impeachment was, Donald Trump's trying to investigate his opponent. Well, we know that that's not impeachable because Barack Obama's administration investigated Donald Trump. And no one said to impeach Obama over that. People said, well, if there's evidence that Trump may have committed crimes, then yes, I guess you have an investigation. Why wouldn't the same be true of Biden? If there was evidence that Biden was engaged in corruption, then sure, Trump should be allowed to have an investigation, right? So that was what the debate was going to be. And I assumed I would debate and say, here's the corruption of Biden that I see. And I assumed Destiny would either agree with me or say, no, there is no evidence of corruption. And that would be the debate. So I go on, and the first thing I say is like, okay, well, they're impeaching Donald Trump because he's trying to look into Joe Biden. And Destiny says, no, they're not. And I was like, what? He's like, no, that's not why he's being impeached. I was like, well, of course it is. It's what they've all said. And he said, no, he's being impeached because he withheld funds. And I said, well, yeah, because he withheld funds, and what they're alleging was a quid pro quo to force an investigation of Biden. It's not the withholding of funds. It's the fact that he was using those funds to force an investigation of Biden, allegedly. That's what the impeachment's over. He's like, no. And I was like, so your argument is just if a president refuses to give funds out immediately to a foreign country, that's impeachable? Yep. And I was like, but that happens all the time. In fact, much of our foreign aid is contingent on quid pro quos. Like, for example, we'll go to like a country like India and we'll say, we'll give you $100 million for X if you help us, with Al-Qaeda in the region. That's a quid pro quo. According to Destiny, no, you can't do that. You can't threaten to withhold the aid. So any quid pro quo would be impeachable. And I said, but literally Obama did that, and Bush did that, and Clinton did that, and Reagan did that. Like they have all done that. That's commonplace. Nope, I don't care. That's it. End of debate. Trump should be impeached. So then it took me 40 minutes in that debate to be like, okay, can we agree impeachment's not a criminal procedure, but a political one? Yes. And so therefore, shouldn't we take into account what the people that are engaged in impeachment that actually have the votes are saying? Yeah, I guess. Okay. So now I'll go through and I'll say, this is why Adam Schiff's saying he should be impeached. This is why Nancy Pelosi says he should be impeached. This is why Chuck Schumer says he should be impeached. None of them say what you said. Oh, okay, I guess. But it wears on you because you have to spend 40 minutes just talking about what is reality. When I did the Antifa debate, you have to, they won't admit the simplest thing. Like, look, there are riots going on. Antifa's done some bad things. I've said from I didn't like the way the Antifa debate question was worded. It was, are all Antifa a terrorist organization? I think that overwhelmingly they are a terrorist organization, but should be treated as such. But by no means do I think that every person that would call themselves Antifa is, in fact, a domestic terrorist. Some of them could not know exactly what's going on with the people that are kind of controlling the movement and things like that. And so there was room for debate there. I thought that she could have made good points on that. I understood that was going to be the challenge of me winning that discussion. But I was prepared for that. Instead, We spent 30 minutes arguing, well, Aaron J. Danielson that was killed by that Antifa member, that was probably a justified shooting. Are you kidding me? We all saw the footage. Nah, could have been self-defense. How can you have a discussion with someone if you could look at reality and they just ignore it? How can you have a discussion with people when we see all the riots that have been occurring at Black Lives Matter protests and riots, and when they say, no, that's not happening? How can you have a discussion then? So, yeah, and what you see, Panzer Lee, is often when I'm doing a debate, it's happened. It's happened with people, if the people that have followed me a while, I'll routinely bring people on my chat. I encourage people that disagree with me. I like it. I'll bring them on Discord to talk. Sometimes they'll say stuff I'm like, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, you're right. You know, absolutely. I'll agree with positions. When I'm doing a debate, I'm not thinking, ooh, I hope I win. I go into it thinking I'm on the right side of the argument, but I'm willing to listen to the other side. Yeah, I'll give you another example. The person I'm debating Friday, and I mentioned this to LCTRfan, they asked me a question. Do you think, if Trump did this, this would be bad? I'm like, yeah. And then I asked them a question. Do you think the FBI should have to verify info before they use it to spy on someone? Well, 10-minute soliloquy. And it becomes difficult because you're never then. And so then when you add on top of that, so it's like, so now I have to you have to spend half your time just arguing what reality is. And then, moving on from then, you then have to be like, okay, most of the time you're dealing with interruptions, you're dealing with people cursing at you and things like that. Not everyone does this, but many of the people on Twitch that I've debated on the left, that's what happens. JBP, are you talking about Jordan Peterson? I'm not familiar with the term ideological possession, but I could intuit what it means, and yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, I mean, it gets difficult, and I try to talk to these people, but I hope you all watched the live stream this morning. We had someone come on. I think I've learned through years of debate on how to deal with the people, that just want to shout things like racism and things like that, and I recommend that you all use, I don't recommend, that's arrogant of me, but I humbly offer the strategy of, if someone tells you you're racist because you are pointing out the riots of things like Black Lives Matter, then recite to them the truth that you do not agree with a bunch of white people that don't live in these black communities coming into black communities and burning them down. When did it become the racist position to say, I don't like white people going into inner city black communities, burning them down? To the left, you're a racist if you take that position. The non-racist position is saying, yes, I wish white people from everywhere would go into inner city black communities and burn them to the ground. That's right, Bearable Light. And again, you're right. They always have tantrums and outbursts when we espouse any truth. That's true. But I can't say all of them. There are people on the left that are, right, the truth is 5 catchphrases. And that is true. When you hear them protesting, it's why they memorize these slogans and stuff, because they can't let me give you an example. And this is a person that I think means well, but someone that I know is convinced, and I've had a little bit of a conversation with him, that Donald Trump is personally responsible for 220-something thousand COVID deaths. He's personally responsible for each one of those deaths. He caused them. And I'm like, well, how? How did that happen? How did he cause these? Well, and he starts saying stuff. And I was like, well, let me ask you this. What would you have done different? Well, I'm not a politician. Okay, well, what would your politician have done different? And he can't give me an argument. He's just like, well. And it's like, that person, their hatred has consumed them so much that they just can't think logically about it. And look, I assume that maybe someone could look at me and say, well, here's how you fall into that same criticism. Maybe, but I don't think so. Like, for example, when I criticize the FBI and their investigation of Trump, I could tell you exactly what should have been done differently. Exactly. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Very simply. You notice that, like, I wasn't a fan of Obama. I wasn't saying, oh, Obama's responsible for 60-something odd thousand bird flu deaths. I didn't say that. Maybe he could have done some things better. Maybe not. I would assume that any pandemic or any virus ever, if you looked back 10 years, if you go in the future 10 years and look back, you could say, well, even the best leaders could have done this better and that better. So I don't know. I have no problem looking at Trump or Obama and saying this is how they could have done better. But my question is, at the time, what would have been done differently? And it's not just that you're saying, look, Trump dropped the ball here and it caused some additional deaths that we didn't need. You're saying he's responsible for every single death. How does that make sense? So your claim is that had Joe Biden been there or Hillary Clinton, there would have been 0 deaths? Or there would have been some deaths, but Joe Biden wasn't responsible for those deaths? And that sort of mentality it stretches across. I find it difficult to believe. The left is doing bad worldwide. Any comment on that? Yeah, I do have a comment on that. And I think it's because when I talk about the left in this country, and particularly the establishment being globalist, it is in effect true. They are globalist. And this same sort of agenda is pervasive through the EU. It's pervasive in other countries. But the problem is, even when the left loses, somehow they're still maintaining the power. For example, the left got absolutely shellacked in the UK elections, the last round of UK elections. It was the biggest win for conservatives in quite some time. Yet, the left's running the show. Lockdowns galore. They're taping off non-essential items in grocery stores. What good is conservatives winning if the left's still going to run the show from behind the scenes? So even though we see the right becoming more popular, which I do believe is the case, it's all a moot point if the left is still controlling the strings of power from behind the scenes. So if Trump doesn't win, or if he does win and we don't see any prosecutions of the people engaged in the coup, did it matter? So, right, Luca, sending testing, PPE, resources to schools, already done. Mask mandate, but is it really just a suggestion that's not enforced? Exactly, that's what they said, already done. Federal reopening guidance, already done, etc. You're absolutely right. Look, I criticize, again, people that have followed me for a while, I criticized Trump in March heavily, furiously. In fact, for those of you who don't know, I was offered a job by the Trump campaign to be their regional representative in my county and the surrounding too. And I turned it down for 2 reasons. One, they wanted me to end my social media presence, which I wouldn't have done. And second, because I was furious that he, right when I was offered the job, defended Cuomo and defended Gavin Newsom and said that they were handling the situation correctly with their lockdowns. Then he criticized places like Georgia for not locking down, and he criticized Sweden. Now we see that places like Georgia and Sweden had it correctly, that the World Health Organization is saying that long-term lockdowns are a disaster and that they don't recommend them. But the left is criticizing Trump from the opposite end. They're saying, well, he should have locked down more. Now, look, I realize everyone makes mistakes. And I think Trump's proven that he now is against these lockdowns. But I do think he caved too much. I agree with that. Yeah. Panzerly, absolutely. And so I voiced that, and there were a lot of Trump supporters that unsubscribed from me. How dare I criticize Trump? Okay. Hey, I'm going to give it to you straight. If I see something on the right that I don't like, I'm going to call it out as well. You know, but it's clear now. You know, I could point to you exactly what Trump did that I thought I would have done differently or would have liked to have seen a leader do differently. The left can't. Because all the left leaders at the time that Trump was praising lockdowns, go back and look at Cuomo's response. Like Cuomo in New York, he wrote this book. Not only did he send nursing home COVID patients, which led to tens of thousands of deaths, not only was his state ran poorer than almost anywhere in the world when it came to COVID, but when you go back and look, he was saying until the day he wasn't, this isn't a big deal. Go out to Chinatown. The fear of the virus is worse than the virus itself. So it's hard for them to then make the claim, oh, well, we would have locked down harder. How? Nancy Pelosi and all these people on the left were out there in January and February saying Trump's a xenophobe for wanting to stop travel from China. Oh, the fear of the virus is worse than the virus itself. So none of them could say what they would have done differently. I can. My criticism, I could quite simply tell you. I've told you exactly what I would have done differently. Exactly. I told you in March, my position hasn't changed. I'm proud to say that when it was unpopular to say so, I criticized Trump, and I had stuck to my guns the whole time, which seems to be more correct every day, which was the following. I'm willing to give up my rights in the Bill of Rights and make sacrifices if the government's transparent and answers the most basic of questions, such as, how many people do they think is going to die if I don't give up these rights? What is the threshold for when the government's allowed to take these rights away? In other words, if they say, well, 1,000 people might die, so we could take your rights away, that doesn't seem right. But if they say 1 million might die, then okay, now we're getting somewhere. What is the threshold for when we could get our rights back? So how long will we be locked down? What is the proof that the lockdowns will save a considerable amount of people's lives? How many lives will be lost as a result of the economic depression and of other things that occurred during the lockdown? If the government in good faith tries to answer those questions, I could have been like, okay, maybe I'm willing to temporarily give up my rights. Even if they were wrong, at least they were transparent and tried to tell people, this is why we need you to make sacrifices. But they didn't do that. The state level didn't do it, and the federal level didn't do that. So I was against the lockdowns. And I said instead, my strategy would have been to protect the most vulnerable people, such as infants, people that are incredibly sick, like in intensive care, and nursing homes. I would have protected them and let everyone else go about their life as usual. And then as we found things that were proven to be effective, ask the regular population to engage in those. So if we found that masks were effective, then you ask people to wear masks. But don't lock down people before you know that it'll work. Right, Panzerly, the truth. And I said this from the get-go, that this, because they didn't answer those questions, then whatever happened, they'd be able to say. So, for example, let's go back. And I was saying all this at the beginning of COVID. Let's go back. You go back and watch my videos from March. I said all of this. So let's go back in a time machine and say, we're listening to these people in early March, talk about how we need lockdowns and things like that. We're listening to Neil Ferguson at the Imperial College, that said 2.2 million people would die, etc. We're listening to all them. They say, let's do these lockdowns. It's what, I say this about the Patriot Act, but this is what I call Schrodinger's lockdowns, right? So on one hand, let's say we do the lockdowns and only 1,000 people die. Do you think that the lockdown advocates would have said, well, I guess we didn't need the lockdowns, it wasn't that severe? They'd have said, we saved everyone's lives through the lockdowns, only 1,000 people died, millions would have. Now, let's go back, and let's say instead of that, we do the lockdowns and millions die. Would they have said, well, the lockdowns were ineffective? Man, not only did all these people die, but we destroyed the economy as well. Do you think they'd have said that? No, they would have said, look at how many people died. See, we were right to do lockdowns. So because they weren't transparent with the public, no matter what happened, they're going to claim that what they did was effective. No matter what. If one person dies or 1 million dies, they'll say, see, it was the right thing to do. That's exactly what they did. It was the same with the Patriot Act. That's why it's incumbent and I said this, there are people get tired of hearing me say this stuff, but listen, there were 3 things I said, and I said this at the beginning of COVID. There are 3 things that could damage our country when it comes to COVID. One is the virus itself. I predicted that would be the least devastating to the country of the 3 things, but I had fully admitted, I had no idea. It could be 10,000 dead. It could be 1 million dead. I don't know. But even if it was over 1 million dead, that would be horrible and tragic, but the country would go on. It would still exist. We would recover. Second was the economic fallout and fallout from medical issues as a result of the lockdowns. I predicted back then and still predict they'll be worse than the deaths we saw from COVID. We could suffer economic depression or recession for the next 10 years over these lockdowns. Many communities will never be the same. Hey, thanks, Bearable Light. Really appreciate it. $5 donation. Right? But here's the truth. Even with a massive economic depression as a result of these lockdowns, the United States will survive. Eventually it'll recover. But there was one thing that that could devastate and destroy the U.S. as we know it. And that was the third thing. And that was if the American people show that they are willing to give up their Constitution and their rights anytime the government says boo. And that's exactly what we're seeing. it blows my mind that the vast majority of people in this country are still accepting a system that tells them you can't go to church, you can't go to work, you can't go visit your mother in a nursing home, you can't go to your daughter's wedding, but Black Lives Matter could burn down cities. And the vast majority of people accept it. They accept that. Okay. That's what has the power to destroy the United States. I can't go to church, Panzerly, but like in Nevada, they can't. In New York, the Jewish community can't go to synagogues. For example, the Supreme Court, thanks to John Roberts, ruled in Nevada that gatherings of 50 or more cannot occur at churches. However, that same church can choose to go to the casino, and that's fine. So you can't worship your God, but you can go gamble. New Jersey, there was a famous clip in New Jersey where they shut down churches, and Murphy, the governor there, was on Tucker Carlson, and he was like, Murphy, you've shut down churches, but liquor stores are open. And Murphy said, well, yes, my experts say that the liquor stores help with coping. You get it? Abortion clinics shut down, or not shut down. Everything else is, though, in the area. I mean, it's insanity. I don't think we'll log. I mean, my sneaking suspicion is, after the election, magically COVID will start to disappear. They don't make sense. They don't. And look, I said this, again, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I said this from the get-go, just in slight amounts of research of this. If you're going to do a lockdown, you have to do it right. You had to have a total lockdown. Like they were picking on Trump this week from saying, we could no longer contain the virus. It's now a mitigation strategy. And the left was like, oh, Trump gave up. Well, no, you dolts. It's because in order to contain something, it can't be released. It's already released. You can't put it back in the bottle. So what do? Now that it's out there, you say, it's out there. Now, what can we do to mitigate the damage from it? That's exactly what you would do. And the example I give is this. As a fat guy, I go to the doctor. And the doctor tells me, he's like, I got this. Being fat is horrible. You're damaging your health in a number of ways. And, it could lead to high blood pressure and diabetes and sleep apnea and all sorts of things. Being fat is bad for you. So I have this pill here. Now, the cost of the pill is going to be $3,000 a month, which for a poor person like me, it's a lot of money. So $3,000 a month, but it will make you incredibly healthy and it'll make you lose weight. However, you can't just take the pill. You also have to eat right and you have to exercise. So I say, that's a big cost, $3,000 a month, but okay, I'll do it. So I pay the $3,000 a month. I get the pill. I go home. I take the pill. And then the rest of the week, I just eat Cheetos sitting on the couch watching TV. All I've done is the worst possible situation. I paid the cost, but I didn't follow through on the rest of the stuff. I only went halfway. And so now I paid the financial cost and I didn't get the benefit. I'm not healthier. That's exactly what we did with these lockdowns, right? They were like, well, we'll shut down the economy, but you could still all go hang out at Walmart and you could do this and you could do that. It wasn't enough to stop the spread, but it was enough to incur the cost. So we never got the benefit of containment, but we got the penalty of economic destruction. Well, okay, but I'm saying if the pill wasn't a placebo. Yes, oftentimes that's the case. But the point is this, you can't use half measures. If you're going to, something like a lockdown could only work if you have a near total lockdown. That's it. Like, you remember when you got the chicken pox, right? And you were just basically isolated. Your parents threw you in a room and you're like, you can't leave. Sometimes they'd even put your siblings in with you so they just got it over with. But that was the idea. Or lice. You're not going around other people. You got lice until it's cured, right? It would be like, oh, you're locked down. You can't go out anywhere. Except on Saturdays, you could still go hang out at the football game. Well, then what good's containing Monday through Friday if you're going to allow them to go out Saturday? It makes no sense. Same thing here. Same thing with the lockdowns. So, all right, I do got to go. I'd like to spend some time with my wife tonight, but special shout out to LCTRfan. If you're here from LCTRfan's channel, please consider following me. I'm going to start some programming notes. My live streams are going to be 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, so 8 a.m. Eastern time. If you're not Eastern time, you could always catch those on YouTube or on Twitch in the sections that showed the previously played videos. But I think that that's the time I'm going to start using. If you're on YouTube, remember, YouTube's not going to notify you, so just know, if you want to watch me 8 a.m., I'll be there. A couple other notes, at 6 p.m. Friday, I will be debating a person named Pisco on the Ukraine stuff. That'll be on my channel, but Dylan Burns will also be hosting that debate. And then next Monday, the day before the election, 8 a.m. Eastern time, I'm doing a 24-hour show. 24 hours live. Me by myself. Hopefully I'll have guests, but I'll be running it. So if you like hearing me and if you want to see if someone like me could keep energy up over 24 hours, tune in. It could be fun. So, oh, my wife would, I saw someone wrote, your wife would enjoy that. And I was like, yeah, you don't know my wife, but it's actually my wife that typed that. So, all right. So, all right. Thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Pisco is super partisan, but that's all right. So thanks so much. I'm really humbled. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much. If you're an old viewer, please consider following me on D Live. I'm Normal America on D Live. Please consider following me on a place like Switch. Thank you. Thank you so much. Stop it, Step Bro. I appreciate it. So, yeah, follow me on different platforms because you never know when one will censor you. And please, perhaps recommend me to some other people. I'd really appreciate it. So go ahead, man. You can ask a question real quick. I got like 3 minutes, so ask quick. Right, of course, Luca. Trump events are super spreaders. What was Philadelphia last night? All right, no problem. Go ahead with your question. I'll try to answer quick. Yeah, no problem. I enjoy these. I really do. So I'm trying to get more consistent, trying to grow my channel. By the way, while we're waiting for OMG Stop It Step Bro, if you're in the Pennsylvania area and you need life insurance, hit me up. I now sell life insurance. And even if you're not in Pennsylvania and it's something you're interested in, hit me up. I'll get my license to sell in your state and help you out with it. So thank you to everyone who donated as well. Unfortunately, I can only see donations through my little window here on YouTube. But if you donated on Twitch or D Live, I really appreciate it. Okay, Step Bro's question is, why do you think people tell others that if they don't support defunding the police, then they don't support the morality of backing BLM? Why do I think people tell others? A lot of negatives in there, so I got to think about this. Tell others if they don't support defunding the police, then they don't support the morality. So people say you have to support defunding the police or else you're not backing Black Lives Matter. Well, it's a good question, right? Here's my little catchphrase that I'll use to answer the question that I've been trying to get to catch on. Black Lives Matter, which is why I don't support Black Lives Matter. So in lowercase, the actual phrase Black Lives Matter, of course Black Lives Matter. But that's why I'm against the organization Black Lives Matter. Because defunding the police, if we take the idea behind Black Lives Matter at face value, that it's actually about showing that we care about inner city black communities and doing what we can to be as fair and equitable and to help those communities out as much as possible. If that's our goal, which I think is a laudable goal, then the ideals of defunding the police are anathema to that. So in other words, the people that are defunding the police is a disaster. I'm willing to have a discussion about, well, wait a minute, we should, maybe we pay police departments a little more money. They could have a little less equipment or something. That's one thing. But the way they're saying defund the police is basically to get rid of these departments. And actually, we probably need way more police training, way more qualified police. And as such, we need to increase funding for police. But as it's being argued, defunding the police is bad not only for America, but the people that face the brunt of that first and foremost are actually inner city black communities. As we can see, if you don't have police in there because they've been defunded, then homicide spike, violent crime spike, which makes the quality of life go down even further in those communities, drives down property values, drives down quality of life, leads to increased incarceration and single parenthood, etc. So all of the issues that we want to solve in these communities are exacerbated by blaming the police and trying to say that they need to be defunded. So, yeah, I mean, why do people do that? Well, the reason, if your question is, why do they attach one to the other, is because it's not about black lives. I mean, that's evident. For example, in my opinion, the two biggest issues in all communities, but certainly in the black community, is lack of education opportunities, In other words, poor state-ran education that we see particularly in elementary and high schools, and lack of two-parent households. What's Black Lives Matter supporting? They support the disastrous teacher unions that are against school choice, which is a disaster. Every evidence shows that school choice in the black community. Why don't we trust black parents to make the best decision for their children with school choice? Especially when the evidence says that they do very well. When we give inner city blacks the ability to have school choice in charter schools, it does much better. But somehow, again, I'm the racist because I want to allow blacks to choose where their children go to school. How am I the racist? I'm saying I trust black families. That's what I want. They'll make better decisions than the state does, than the local city does. So that's one thing that Black Lives Matter and the teachers unions are against. And the other, they said in their website, we want to dismantle the structures of the nuclear family. In other words, get rid of the idea of two-parent households. That's one of the biggest problems. Again, in all communities, but it's definitely evident in inner city black communities, where male role models are severely needed. So if they really cared about black lives, they're endorsing policies that are damaging to black lives. Again, open borders, that you see the same sort of Black Lives Matter people supporting. Open borders and illegal immigration, first and foremost, damages inner city communities, particularly inner city blacks, because they end up moving into inner cities where predominantly black people live, and they compete in low-skilled labor that in those inner cities are predominantly the working pool of black people. So these policies, in order for a lot of these wealthy liberals, in order for them to have cheap avocado toast, they don't have a problem that the illegal immigrants are directly driving down the wage of inner city black folks. They don't care. But they'll shout Black Lives Matter at you. They endorse burning down inner city black communities in the name of protesting. They're not burning down their own homes, are they? Nope. So again, look, I don't like identity politics, but I do understand wanting to identify with your group and advocate for them. I get that. And I don't live in the inner city. I talk about this all the time. There are real problems in the inner city. Real problems that I can't begin to understand what it would be like to live under those problems. And I'm willing to listen and to do what I can to help. I think that that's very important. But I just think that these policies that are being offered by the left, and particularly groups like Black Lives Matter, are a disaster. Remember, these communities have been ran exclusively by Democrats for 70, 80, and sometimes more years. So, I hope that answered your questions. Exactly. Why would you trust parents if your goal is to dismantle the nuclear family? Again, isn't it ironic that teachers' unions are concerned about everything except teaching? So, all right. Thanks so much, everyone. I do have to run. I'll be back at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So watch Tucker tonight. I know he's over. I'm going to watch the replay here. Tony Boblinski was on, kind of proving the corruption of Biden, hopefully proving it. Thank you. Thank you, Stubborn Bro. Well, I don't know if I'm a legend, but I'm trying to get there. By the way, you like my new daddy shirt, The Legend? First time father come January. So I'm trying to be a legend. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. Any new followers, thank you so much. Look for me back here tomorrow at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, have a good one.